Hi there, faithful politics listeners and viewers. If you're joining us on YouTube, thanks for coming and spending some time with us today in this latest episode. Also, if you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, smash all those buttons. Don't smash your computer, but smash all the buttons. And we definitely want to get this content out. We think it's really high quality. We try to make it high quality, and we want you guys to share it and benefit from it. Leave comments for us. We do read them. We're not able to respond to everyone, but we do read, and we thank you for your feedback. And of course, I'm Josh Burtram, your faithful host, and I'm joined by Will Wright, your political host. Will, it's really good to see you, brother.
It's really good to be seen by somebody that has good taste.
There you go. Thank you. I take that as a real compliment. But you know what? We always address controversial issues for the most part in this show. And we figured again, what is more controversial than Christmas? And today we get the distinct pleasure to have Dr. Timothy Larsen on the show with us. He is an esteemed historian and theologian. He serves as the Caroline and Fred McManis Professor of Christian Thought at Wheaton College. He's a graduate of Wheaton and the University of Stirling, and his work focuses on modern British religious history and the interplay of religion, culture, and intellectual thought. He's known for publications like Crisis of Doubt and The Slain God. And Larsen has also held fellowships at Cambridge and Oxford and was awarded a Doctor of Divinity from the University of Edinburgh in 2020. And this reflects his eminence in historical theology. Did you hear that, Tim? Eminence.
It was a very good word, yeah.
I like.
You told
that.
Will he looked good, which sounded better.
Yeah. He's going to serve as president of the American Society of Church History in 2025, and we're going to talk to him about Christmas. He's written several books on that and oversaw the editor of the
That's
Oxford Handbook of Christmas, and it's such a great opportunity, and we're so thankful to have you on the show with us today. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Let me just say there will be a political transition on January 6th to a new president, and that president will be me as a president of the American Society of Church History. That is the day in which we do our handing over at our conference.
Not if I have anything to do with it.
Yeah, is there any chance that that's going to be like protested and they're going to come and like, do you think, what do you think? Is that possible?
I'm feeling pretty good, but when I initially ran, they do competitive elections, but it kind of fell through. And so I ran without anybody running against me. And I did kind of worry that people would write in just like mad. This is not my choice and I object. But fortunately, I got elected without having an opponent and it did work out.
It's awesome. So are there dirty campaign, strategies that happen when one gets elected to the president of American Society of Church History?
Somebody once said that academic debates are so bitter because the stakes are so small.
That's awesome. Well, again, thank you for coming on the show today, Tim. I got to say, what got you interested and how did you become the editor of the Oxford Handbook of Christmas? I'd love for you to talk about that.
I'll give. There's always multiple ways you can answer these questions, and I'll give an honest answer that your kind of podcast skews towards. But I think it is like literally true. Almost always, I figure out why I did something kind of retrospectively, and I think a lot of it was just that the culture was becoming more and more divisive and mean-spirited and depressing. And I kind of asked myself, without, kind of subconsciously, what is the happiest thing I could spend a lot of my time thinking about that I actually have a chance of kind of adding something to as a scholar that fits my expertise. And I thought, wouldn't it be kind of a nice oasis if like a big chunk of my life was like just thinking about Christmas? And that actually did work really, really well. The Apostle Paul says, things that are true, that are lovely, that are good report. Why don't you think about those things for a while? And that's what I was trying to do.
Well, I guess for the uneducated, that's probably not the right word.
Uninformed.
Yeah. Like, what is the Oxford Handbook of Christmas?
Yes. So Oxford Handbook is a series, and it is sort of like a reference book in that it tries to cover all the topics, and you can just kind of dip into it and find the topic that you're interested in. But they're done with kind of long essays rather than just a short little column or two like you might get in most reference books, an encyclopedia or that kind of thing. So it has, I think, 46 chapters. So if you just want to know about Christmas films, there's a whole chapter on Christmas films. If you want to know about the Virgin Mary, there's a whole chapter on the Virgin Mary. If you want to know about Christmas in Africa or in Asia or Latin America, so on, there's whole chapters on that. If you want to, know about food culture, there's a whole chapter by somebody who's an expert on food and drink. So you kind of just pick what you're interested in. You could read the whole thing if you're really hardcore, but you could also just kind of find the thing that you care about and go deeper.
Got it. So does the book talk about, I don't know, like the person of Santa Claus or anything like that? Are there chapters in there that really kind of go into that detail?
There is a whole chapter called From St. Nicholas to Santa Claus. My own chapter that I wrote is on the 19th century, so it's kind of like the historical progression, has about 4 chapters. And I did the 19th century, which is a pivotal chapter. 19th century is when Santa Claus goes viral, when the world finds out about him. Yeah, I can tell you about that conversation if you're interested.
Yeah, I would love. Yeah, that would be great to go into that. We just had an episode that talked about Santa Claus, but it would be great to get your perspective on it as well, because it's always interesting to figure out how someone goes from, again, someone who punched a heretic at the Council of Nicaea, apparently, to this fat white guy with a beard that breaks into your house and steals all the credit from you for giving your kids presents.
Josh, your heart is hard.
Is it that obvious?
It's 2 sizes too small. I think that's the problem.
That's the clip that I think we need to have go viral. Is Professor telling Josh that his heart is hard. I'm gonna find a way to put that on a loop for
Do you want me just to give you background on Santa Claus, or do you want to?
Yeah. Kind of walk through that a little bit, and then we'll jump into some other stuff.
So I think Santa Claus comes out of deeply Christian impulses and from the Christian community. So I can make that case, and you can push back if you want. This podcast is all about conflict, right? So push back all you want. All right. So yes, the historical Nicholas is known for multiple things. There's stories about him, but the story that kind of leads this through line is these poor girls who are so destitute they might even get sold into slavery. If they had a dowry, they could have a respectable husband and their life would look very different. And Nicholas has compassion on them. And rather than kind of take credit for being their savior, Santa's no white savior, he throws a bag of money in their window anonymously at night for the first one when she's old enough, and then the second one. And by the third one, they're on the lookout. And so they figured out who it is. And especially in the medieval period, St. Nicholas becomes one of the most popular saints. We know that because so many churches are dedicated to him, and lots of like trade groups and kind of associations, kind of professions would have St. Nicholas as their patron saint. So he was kind of in people's imagination, and it was for that primarily. And then eventually there were some nuns who wanted to help poor children. And rather than, again, they're like, oh, St. Nicholas got this right. Rather than take credit for it, we're just going to put a note on it that says from St. Nicholas, and kind of like carry on this idea of giving anonymously. Now, this is where the plot twist, like there's the flashback that makes the whole story make sense. Jesus told people to give anonymously in the Sermon on the Mount. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Like, do it on the sly. That is the Christian way to give. And so this tradition it's not about me taking credit for giving this. If you do it for a big show, if you kind of put out a press release and say, I've named this building after myself and aren't I an amazing person? Jesus is like, I'm not that impressed. You got what you paid for. You wanted good publicity and you got it. We're even. But if you give anonymously, it's just about helping those people. It's not about you. And so in the 19th century, there is this um, kind of cultural and ethnic mix in New York City where different traditions are coming together. And English speaking people are encountering all the time Dutch people who are carrying on that kind of continental European tradition of St. Nicholas. And they're starting to pick up on it, and they can't understand what Dutch people are saying very well, and so they hear what they're trying to repeat what they say, and they say the Dutch version of Saint Nicholas as Santa Claus. Santa is just the Latin word for saint, so they're kind of just trying to hear those syllables and say them again, and lots of information about Santa Claus gets added in the 19th century, which we can also talk about. But I think the key root is that idea of giving anonymously. It also there was such a kind of patronizing spirit and with so many people that oh, you are the lower classes, you are the ones that are unfortunate, and we are the ruling classes who benevolently give you these things. That was how Christmas worked. Christmas was all about hierarchy in the past, and so what the tradition of Santa Claus does is it takes away all that patronizing. It's not me being better than you, helping you out because your life is so pitiful. It is magic. It is just pure joy. It is just giving that is mischievous and delightful and fun, coming not from the hierarchy, but coming from an elf.
I love everything you just said, because it really kind of put things into perspective. Because when we spoke with Adam English, you know, I had jokingly but somewhat seriously said, my kids don't know about Santa Claus, or they know that he's not real, because I don't want some white guy breaking into my house getting credit for all the toys my kids get. But based on everything you just said, it almost sounds like that's kind of the point. The point is some mysterious figure, Saint Nick, bringing presents, trying not to be known, because that's sort of the biblical way of doing things. And did I kind of capture that correctly?
Absolutely. And if anybody can get away with breaking into a house, it's a white guy. So let's keep things safe.
Gotta preach.
But
Oh, my word.
So one layer I'll add, Will, is the same thing. In a normal gift giving in a family, there's all of that which kids feel. I remember feeling it as a kid. Can mom and dad really afford this? Have we pushed things too far? And so what the Santa Claus tradition does is it kind of takes that emotional pressure off the table as well, and it turns it in again to this celebration that isn't tainted by all of those normal all year long anxieties about look, we can't really do new shoes this year because we have this other thing going on with replacing the heating system or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So I have this thought that's going on, just bouncing around in my head. Let me give you a little context. We had this interview with Dr. Adam English, talked about Santa Claus and the evolution from Saint Nick to what we have today. And then I thought, man, and one of the things he suggested was that, yeah, we should really talk to our kids more about Saint Nick. And so I was talking to my wife, and she's like, "Oh yeah, well, there's a Veggie Tales about that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so we watched the Veggie Tales with my kids. It was really good. But then, of course, the Veggie Tales is also embellishing certain things. So they're in Greece, but it was actually Turkey, but it was, influenced by ancient Greece, right? Where he grew up and all this stuff. So they told the story, but then they have things where basically sheep get attached to this kind of barrel that looks like a sleigh, and then they're falling down this hill, and then it flies over the moon, and then there's where this idea of Santa Claus is coming from. My kids are like, I know that didn't really happen, that's not real. And I'm like, well, yeah, guys, that's not real, that's not really how it happened. And so there's always this combination of embellishment and truth, some root in truth, some, basically things that have been built onto it. And even in something like VeggieTales, which of course we know is just, it's an interesting cartoon. It's supposed to be entertainment. That's how they do it. And but then also trying to whole idea was trying to get back, oh well, it's not about gifts, it's not about what we're going to get from Santa. It's really, let's talk about Saint Nick and who he was. And it just makes me think about the way that we get our traditions. And I would love for you to kind of help us understand, like, how have different cultures contributed uniquely to the way that we celebrate Christmas today? And even like we can do European cultures, and but even beyond that, like how is there anything that's contributed to how we celebrate in America that, that maybe we wouldn't, the normal person wouldn't think about, wouldn't know about, that can kind of add some richness to the idea of what it actually means to celebrate Christmas when we get together this holiday season.
Yes. So, around the world, there are actually 12 days of Christmas. Many cultures celebrate this as a season. It actually starts on December 25th. In America, it tends to end on December 25th. We have a radio station here in Chicago that starts playing Christmas music on November 1st, but December 26th,
Yep.
it's gone. So the church calls us to celebrate for 12 days. Most of us don't have the spiritual discipline and stamina to party that long. We give up at least by New Year's Day and start in with diets and stuff. But the church is like, no, you're not done yet. there are 5 more days. Make it to Epiphany. You can do it. Um, so yeah, I think lots of things are. You take individual things. So, the Christmas tree really became a thing in Germanic cultures first, and it's kind of a late adopter into the English speaking world. And and one of the wonderful things about America is that so many different cultures have ended up living here from around the world. And so different families infuse those things, and then they sometimes get adopted by their neighbors. My father, his parents both immigrated as adults from Norway, and Norway had a tradition of opening Christmas presents on Christmas Eve, which I thought was a super cool thing. I was like way in favor of, like, yes, let's be Norwegian this year and get a present now. you know? I see that, in other cultures, and then
Yes.
obviously there are food traditions that transfer a lot. So yeah, I'm a big believer in kind of replenishing our Christmas by rediscovering traditions and practices that we think will work for our family, and kind of not letting it just thin out into something that is the lowest common denominator.
I am curious. It seems like Christmas today is extremely commercialized, and I'd love to get your thoughts on what effect sort of consumerism, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, had on what we know about Santa Claus, in the 21st or 20th century.
Yeah, wow. There's so many different ways to go with that. I mean, obviously, marketing departments have figured out that Santa is somebody who can sell products and who works cheap, and so and so obviously, famously, Coca-Cola really kind of came up with the Santa suit. They didn't invent that, but they kind of standardized it. Like, Santa now can't ever switch back to his green suit. He has to wear his red one all the time. Beforehand, he had a couple options. He could do more of a bishop yellow thing some days and a green thing the other day. Now it's all red all the time. He's got his look just set. So like, even like an interesting thing is that we wrap our presents, and the wrapping is almost kind of like decontaminating the commercialism. It's like it's about, like, could this be something different? Could it just not just be a transaction of commerce, but could you add some magic to it? Can you add some wonder to it? In a store, you kind of know exactly what you're buying. That's the point. But you put wrapping on it, and now it's like I've handed you something that you don't know what is. And part of the fun of it is like, oh, well, it's heavy. What could it be? What could be this heavy? Maybe it's some dumbbells. I don't know. So yeah, and I have so many different threads on that, and we can keep going as you want. But I want to say that biblically, there is a time to feast and a time to fast. So it's not, I think some people as Christians get into this is inherently wrong because it's a time of abundance or a time of excess. And that's what a feast is. It's more than usual. That's the definition of a feast. And so, it's the exact same thing with a wedding. A wedding, better food, better drink, presents, because we're celebrating. And you don't fast when the bridegroom is there. So this is the time to now, if you're living the Christian life right, you also have fasting built into your year. And so, but this is a feast, and so giving gifts is a universal human instinct for how to celebrate. It's in every culture. You can go back as far as you want, pick any part of the globe. People always give gifts as a mark of celebration. Christmas is a Christian celebration, so we give gifts. But it's also true, and so if I say the other side, the best gifts have always been the ones that have involved some of your own labor and thought. Making something yourself is unquestionably more meaningful, is more of a gift because it's partly a gift of yourself. And the very fact that you put labor into that means that you have taken the time to think, what would this person actually really probably appreciate and want? If I'm going to, make a sweater rather than buy one, I better think hard about will they actually wear the sweater that I make, and whatever it is. So I think that part, the commercialization of the easiness of I can just buy something, boom, 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 pull it in the cart, does sometimes mitigate against our best celebrations. And then, of course, the pressure to spend more money than you can afford is just wrong and unchristian. We do have, to go back to St. Nicholas, not him, but we have bishops in the 4th century railing against that, and so it's always been there. And that is, if that's what you mean by commercialism, then Christians need to push back against that and say, let's do Christmas in a way that we can celebrate within our circumstances now, and not, just push the bills to January and worry about it then or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking while you were talking, I just want to make sure that we're clear that in the Christian celebrations, it's really the best drinks are the sweetest grape juices, right? And not the most alcoholic drinks. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. That's what. Well, obviously,
Santa
I'm being
loves
kind of
cocoa.
silly there. He does. He also loves eggnog, I heard, and the real
Oh,
kind. And
yeah.
so
I don't know where you met that Santa.
I met him outside of the Walmart ringing the bell for the Salvation Army. But anyway, so I want to think about religious and secular aspects of Christmas and how they've kind of evolved simultaneously, right? Because it seems like, right, it's clear that there's these, religious impetus, undertone, context, all this stuff, right? Celebrating on December 25th. That's traditionally celebrating the birth of Jesus, though right, obviously there's debate on, that probably isn't the date when Jesus was born, but, no one really knows the date. So maybe it could be, I don't know. But we have this clear, like, religious context here. And yet, also at the same time, we have this continuing push in our culture, right? Happy holidays. And people getting angry. We got to bring Christ back in Christmas. I can't believe Starbucks would put happy holidays instead of Christmas on their drinks. I'm banning Starbucks. I'm boycotting Starbucks. And yet somehow, though, it seems like these two things are connected and working together. How has the religious and the secular evolved to get us to where we are today, where it seems like Christmas is almost more of a universal celebration, at least in America, maybe the Western world, than a religious one.
Wow, it's and like just for the record, Will and Josh would be very happy for you to sponsor them, Starbucks. They're totally on board with you. If you got the money, they believe in your
Yes,
brand.
please.
Yes. Make it rain, Starbucks.
So, yeah, again, there's so many ways to unthread this. There were certain kinds of Protestants at the time of the Reformation, and then for a couple centuries thereafter, who rejected Christmas. They rejected Christmas because their whole agenda was, well, like lots of this stuff has accumulated that's unbiblical, that's just tradition. We need to kind of renew Christianity by getting back to the core New Testament message and gospel. And those instincts, I'm a Protestant, were right. But then the question is, well, how thoroughly do you do that? And what does it mean? And what does or does not apply to it? And so for a time, those Protestants thought that Christmas was something that should be rejected, that it's not reinforcing the gospel, it's distracting from it. The same denominations and traditions will change their mind by and large within a couple centuries and decide that Christmas is actually permissible and good for Christian life. But this is the ironic part that I want to get to, Josh. They therefore only objected to the spiritual Christmas, if I can put it that way. They said the cultural Christmas was fine. So you have very devout Protestants who are Presbyterians, Baptists, and so on, who are like, put up a tree if you want, roast a goose, give presents, have holly and mistletoe, just keep Jesus out of it, and I'm cool, And so you initially have like,
That's funny.
yeah, it is, and so. So, and I watched this. I tracked this in real time. I was trying very carefully to watch how it changed decade by decade. And so, when they feel like they're really giving in, is when they start having Christmas church services. That is the crossing threshold for them. It's like now we've acknowledged that we can use this as a Christian celebration, as a form of worship, and not just as a cultural holiday, which we're already happy with. So the tension is inside Christianity. But you're right. Christianity created this holiday, but it's been so wonderful. It's been so successful that other people want a piece of it who do not identify with the Christian faith. I think we ought to see that as a triumph. In the Oxford Handbook of Christmas, how it works, how I do it is you put a proposal through that they send out to various experts to vet, and then they either contract you or they don't. And you have to write a proposal that looks clearly like you're not rigging it, that you're going to do a kind of objective, fair, scholarly thing that's going to cover everything. So I deliberately put in my proposal, which came all the way through to the book, a chapter called Secularity, about how secular people respond to Christmas and objections to Christmas, atheist objections to Christmas. And I picked a scholar who I admire him and his work, but he is a straightforward atheist activist. I mean, he's a great scholar as well, but he'll be like hired by pressure groups, to speak before, government committees and whatever, to say, keep Christmas, out kind of thing. He's one of those people. And I booked him to do this chapter. He agreed to do it. And then like months later, when it's getting closer to the deadline, he comes back to me and says, this is just not working out. I've been looking into it. I can't do it. And I was like, it could be a short chapter, just kind of focus on the things that you kind of found, things that but I really want you to try. So he's like, okay. And finally he does it. And he kind of, what he has to write is like, let's face it, even atheists love Christmas. We're gonna give this one to Christians. You've done a good thing. It's pointless to try to be anti-Christmas, even if you're an atheist, because it's just too life affirming. It's too fun. It's got the birth of a child at its center. If you don't like the birth of a child, you are not a human being. Kind of like just lighten up and join in.
I think that's so insightful, because I mean, I've always wondered, Christmas on its surface seems like a uniquely Christian holiday. But I mean, like, I grew up as an atheist. Like, I came to the faith much later in life in 2008, and I celebrated Christmas, and just was like, hey, this is kind of fun, trees, lights, presents, whatever. Like, who doesn't like that kind of stuff? I can just sort of forget, the whole Jesus birth kind of thing. But based on what you're saying, it's almost like the early iterations of Christmas were sort of void of Jesus, right?
So in the Protestant world, yes. So they were seeing it as just an exclusively Catholic thing. That was their complaint about it. But again, Christmas just kind of continues to kind of take more and more territory, and so and everything gets swapped. So Protestants start Christmas trees, and Catholics are suspicious, but they eventually start doing them. Catholics start nativity scenes, and Protestants are suspicious, but they start doing them. And so, and even like, we sing like, Hark the Herald Angels Sing is written by Charles Wesley, Methodist founder, very Protestant. You go to Catholic Mass for Christmas or Christmas Eve, they'll sing that song. If you go to the candlelight service at the very Protestant place across the street, they'll sing Silent Night, written by a Roman Catholic priest.
Speaking of music, because I do find that a little bit interesting, and so around December, I mean, I used to be on a worship team. I've been on several worship teams, and it's like December 1st, you get the order from your pastor, hey, we're going to be doing Christmas music sets, which I've always hated. Like I have this particular like animosity towards Christmas music, especially church Christmas music, because like it's hard. Maybe I'm just not a good musician, but with regards to Christmas music, like help me trace the kind of evolution of Christmas music in sort of the modern context, and like did it come before the first Christmas church service, or has it always just been out there? They just sort of reclassified it as Christmas music.
Yeah. So I once actually wrote a lecture, did it for a Reformed Baptist church in Alabama, and I called it "From the Virgin Mary to Mariah Carey: The History of Christmas Carols." So I tried to figure this out. From the very beginning. So and I'm a church historian, and so people have I've been on these interviews, and I'm like, everything about origins is murky, particularly because the early church, until the persecution stops in the 4th century, you're not keeping records. But very few things survive, and so you always just get fragments, and the fragment is always showing you something that already exists. Nobody's writing. You don't get a source that says, this year we decided to have a Christmas service for the first time. You just get a snapshot of what a church is doing, and it includes a Christmas service. And so you're like, okay, well, I wonder how much farther that goes back. You don't know. So it seems, but the earliest we can see, Christians wanted to sing what the angels declare in Luke 2. And so that bit of text, proclamation of the good news, becomes a Christian chorus as early as as we can know. Obviously, from the Virgin Mary to Mariah Carey, why I said that is because Mary's song, it's called that, is the Magnificat. And so you have this kind of lending itself to, let's sing this gospel, let's sing this joyful news from the very beginning. In the medieval period, churches, and it's still this true to this day. Well, all professional musicians or serious musicians know that the easiest time of the year to get gigs is the Christmas season. There are all kinds of venues, as not least churches, who are like, we want to put on high quality music at this time of year. We can get away with like something really simple in July and August, but we want to kind of bring it on in this season. And that was true in the medieval period. You could see the records where like there are like, we need to kind of book the best musicians. We need to pay well. We need to make sure that this event happens. So it's one of the great feasts of the church. Easter and Christmas are the two biggies, always have been, and so Christmas is the winter festival of the church, and the music has always been part of that celebration. And so again, you can see in the medieval period elaborate choirs, sometimes like parts of the choir being in the congregation and kind of doing this kind of special kind of like multiple locations of the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you go forward, and Christmas is also the historic Christmas is a very communal activity. What happens in the 19th century, the Christmas that we know, is a very domestic event. It's all about the family and the immediate family and the home, hearth and home. But before that, it was much more communal. We still have a little bit of that. Caroling is like, this is about the community. We all know our neighbors. We're all kind of getting together with our neighbors. It's like this kind of marauding party is happening through our neighborhood. That's like the old Christmas. Like, we do this together as a community. And so then you have all these kind of fun songs that you sing in the streets, and you sing together as this kind of block party. And that also builds as well.
Man, I seriously love this conversation. It's so amazing getting more context because we just assume so much, right? When you grow up, you enter into this world, you don't have any choices. Your parents do everything for you. You don't choose what traditions you have. They're just there, and then you just assume, right? Because that's what we do. Hey, this is the tradition. This is the way to do it. This is the right thing. Until you start meeting other traditions, you start seeing other things, and it just becomes like, oh man, what the world is bigger than I thought. And I would love to focus in on a theological
Hmm.
idea here because we have all these traditions around Christmas. We give gifts, we have a baby in a manger, we have the Virgin Mary, we have, right, the nativity scenes, we have Christmas plays, Christmas music. I mean, so tradition rich. I mean, I can't think of another time of the year that is as rich in tradition as Christmas is, like for probably the normal, maybe American and certainly Protestant or even Catholic. And I say that with some trepidation because I don't want to overstate, that claim, but it's just like I, it's so rich in that, and yet, what I don't really hear very much talked about. I do hear it some, but very little about the incarnation and the actual theology of the incarnation and how important that theology is. Now, again, I know they talk about God with us, talk about Jesus is the reason for the season when you're in church. All these nice quips and these things that, again, like I'm not going to say happy holidays, I say Merry Christmas. So it's like, it's this idea, right, that it's very important. And yet I feel like the average Christian is woefully ignorant of what the incarnation actually is and means, and even its importance. Like if we think about the most important doctrines for an average Christian, incarnation probably doesn't rank in the top, whatever three. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't for any Christians or even for the church, but that's kind of what I'd love for you to kind of talk about with this incarnation. Maybe, what is it? What do we mean when we say incarnation? When people
Mm.
talk about that, it's not a normal word that we use.
Yeah.
What do we mean when we say incarnation? And how important was it in the church? And how important do you feel like it is culturally now? What's
Yeah.
happened to that?
Yeah. So the two great doctrines that anchor the gospel are the incarnation and the atonement. That is how you tell the story. That's how the story is anchored theologically. And if you're not doing both of those, you're not getting the rich full gospel. And I think there is exactly what you're saying. There are a certain kind of Protestant who thinks that all that matters is atonement. I remember, in my childhood, going to Christmas services where the crucifixion was preached. It's like, so it's like Santa's got to wear red every day. We got to preach atonement every day. And you got to tell the whole story. So the good news is that we get another chance every year to tell this story and to tell it better and to disciple people and to deepen them in their faith and understanding. It comes around again. In my home church, I'm on the road to preach this Sunday. I've preached a Christmas sermon, Advent season Christmas sermon every year for over 20 years now. And our founding pastor told me that I had to change my theme every year, which I've had. It's like the kind of longest inside joke in our church is that I have to find a new way to tell this same story every year. But I love it. To me, that's actually theologically important because Scripture, I believe that a mark of Scripture theologically is that Scripture is inexhaustible, that there is always riches to bring out that you have not yet brought out. And so to me, it's a kind of an expression of the reality of Scripture being living and active, that there's always a new way to tell this story. And so we try again. But yeah, so my text this coming Sunday is Micah 5. Oh, little town of Bethlehem is the carol version of that text. Micah is just like, I know prophets, like they talk about big places, Babylon and Tyre and Nineveh and Jerusalem, but there's this little place I want to tell you about that's more important than you think it is. It's a place called Bethlehem, and out of it, you're going to be surprised what happens. There's going to be a ruler, and when the woman gives birth to a son, that's when the time of deliverance is coming. And so Incarnation, Josh, to me, it's an amazing story because it's not how we would do it. We would just send a fully formed superhero who could deal with stuff, We would not, plop a 7-pound newborn down and say, just watch it grow. you know? And so Incarnation means many, many things. Again, it's inexhaustible. But it is God has become fully human. He is no longer divine. He is fully divine as well, but he is fully, truly human. We talked about carols like, bad theology is no crying he makes. They wrapped that little dude in swaddling clothes so he couldn't even move his arms and legs. You bet he screamed his head off. So he's a real baby. And God knows what it is like to live in this life. He's taken on human form, and he understands the process and the frustrations and the limitations that the embodied situation has for us. And God's plan for deliverance is that plan. God is not able to be unsympathetic, is not unsympathetic to us in our weaknesses because he has lived it. He knows it. And every year, let's try again to help people understand.
I'm curious if you think Christmas today, as we know it, would be different if Saint Nicholas was never born. Or maybe the better question would be, what would Christmas look like today? Or would we even celebrate Christmas if Saint Nick was never born?
Oh yeah, no. Christmas is not dependent on the St. Nicholas tradition to be Christmas. And you see that, my thing about Santa Claus is if he didn't exist, you'd have to invent him. Every culture that celebrates Christmas has a magical gift bearer. Sometimes it is the Christ child. That is the gift bearer in Germanic countries and some other countries. But the connection between there's going to be gifts because we're going to celebrate is going to be there, and Christmas is worth celebrating. So Christmas is worth celebrating is widely agreed, and that how you celebrate is you give gifts is widely agreed. And so the only thing left in that equation is how can you make giving gifts kind of more fun, more mischievous, more magical, more mysterious. And people are all, like I said, wrapping gifts in and of itself is trying to do that. Let's make this a little more mysterious, a little more interesting, a little more like you don't know quite what's going on. So that instinct, I think, is pretty strong as well. And so it has taken other forms, but Santa is just fatter than the others, and so he won out.
That's true. I mean, my next question is sort of, attaches onto that, because what we've learned or have seen from the stuff that you mentioned to us, our conversation with Adam English, is that it seems like the character of Santa has evolved over time, and a lot of different influences, have added on certain elements to Santa, the Santa that we know today. So, if we were to fast forward 100, 200 years from now, will we see a Santa on Ozempic or something, that are, and instead of reindeer, they're I don't know, a bunch of Teslas or something like that. Is there an evolution of Santa that you're starting to see and are curious about, what he would look like, 100 years from now?
As you were speaking, some AI created that image, so it's already happened. Every time culture has changed, people have tried to insert Santa into that cultural change. So as soon as flying in airplanes became a theme, you started seeing images of Santa flying an airplane, and you can go on and on that way. And there are, he's uh, a cultural force that is hard to think of any other kind of literary character, if we could put it that way, who is bigger. There are Middle Eastern countries where it is against the law to wear a Santa cap because they don't want this thing coming in, but it's coming in. It is so permeable. I think there will always be a um, a tradition that is child centric, that will be about that connection with children, and that creates parameters and opportunities. But then there will always be that 14-year-old kid who is done with being a child and now wants to see bad Santa or wants to see horror Santa or whatever it is, and that tradition will always have endless permutations.
Oh, I love that. So, you've done a lot of research into Christmas, more than anyone I've met, except for maybe Dr. Adam English, who we interviewed before. So, in all this research that you've done into the history, the literature, how has that shaped your perspective on celebrating the holiday? Are there personal traditions that you've adopted, you've changed, you've dropped as a result of your research? How has it shaped you in that?
Can I shamelessly plug my current book, or is that against the values of Christmas?
You absolutely can.
It's in keeping with the tradition, actually.
Yeah, nothing more Christmas than tempting people to buy stuff. So yeah, the current book is called 12 Classic Christmas Stories. It's a collection from great authors: Charles Dickens, Louisa May Alcott, G.K. Chesterton, O. Henry, on and on. 12 stories. And I did that because my father read stories aloud at Christmas time when I was young. I lost my father about 6 years, and like that loss, like it kind of grows and grows in some ways. Like the kind of the space of what's missing becomes bigger in some ways, and so you try to figure out how do I kind of process that, and one of them is doubling down on recreating some of the things that meant a lot to him at Christmas time. And one of those was reading stories aloud. And so I've created this book. I kind of didn't actually know if it would work. The book has been doing well, and people are telling me they're excited about it, that they actually do read at Christmas. I kind of was like, am I really kind of like, trying to say something that just doesn't connect with the 21st century? Like, oh, if you want to be, really Santa, like you should build an ice igloo, in Antarctica. Like, who's going to do that? So, but it's kind of working, and I'm excited about that. Our family, every year, there is a Benedictine monastery about, I don't know, 40 minutes away from us, Marmion Abbey. It's in the rule of St. Benedict that you're not allowed to price gouge. So you know that you get a fair deal from the Benedictines, or you're dealing with really bad Benedictines. There's only two choices. And and also Benedict said you got to do manual labor, which was a kind of very wise spiritual idea for monasticism. So part of their manual labor is running Christmas tree farms. And we go and we cut down our own tree and bring it home. It's a very important kind of day in our family. And the two things are connected. It takes more work to read a story aloud as a family activity than it does just to watch a movie. And it takes more work to cut down your own tree and bring it home than it is just to put up an artificial tree or take a pre-cut one from a lot that's 2 blocks away, not 40 minutes away. But in making it easier, you're also taking the memory out of it. It becomes something that doesn't become important. It's just a stupid transaction. Just go down to the lot, grab the tree, bring it back. We'll be here chilling. No, we all go together. We cut it down. We take pictures. And so the same with reading aloud creates memories. I remember it from my father, again, from way back in the Cold War. That's when that was happening. It was a long time ago, and it's there inside my heart and mind and imagination. So I would say, of course, something might take more effort. I push things a little too far with my family. Some years we will take whipping cream and whip it by hand rather than putting it in the mixer. And I'll kind of pass around this bowl and get everybody like, it's your turn. Like, spend 4 minutes whipping this, and eventually it takes a long time, but it eventually becomes true whipped cream. And to me, it's like, I'm enjoying eating this whipped cream so much more because we actually made it. We didn't just squirt it out of a tin bottle, or we didn't put it in the blender. And so effort connects often to meaning.
That's really good. My last question for you is this. So you've given us a lot of really great information. I've learned a ton about Santa Claus and all the other stuff. But my question is, why should we believe you, given that Fox News says Wheaton College is a woke college?
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. I think the main reason why Fox News said that was because they liked alliteration. If Wheaton did not start with a W, we would be totally fine. But the alliteration was just too tempting. Wheaton is a deeply, truly, thoroughly Christian place. If what you care about most is Jesus Christ and the gospel, we are your people. If what you care most about are certain culture wars and having only certain messages said, if you would rather troll people than actually change the culture, then we're not the place for you. But there is not a universe in which Hillsdale is more Christian than Wheaton College. We are far more Christian. And it's built into everything we do. And so, choose this day whom you will serve.
Yeah, that's well said. I would love for you to kind of talk about two things. And this is my last major question before we get into some practical things. One is,
it's practical, like
what
how you pay me for this. Is that practical? oh, sorry.
Yes, Venmo. Oh, sorry. Anyway,
Sorry.
The first thing is, what are you concerned about with Christmas right now? Are there any trends, any things that you're concerned with? And then what brings you hope about the way Christmas is being seen and celebrated and all of that in our culture?
Yeah. So in the first part, I don't know if it kind of comes at it directly, but you've kind of mentioned several times, and I hear it all the time, Christians complaining that Christmas is getting canceled or that it's just become secular or worldly and so on. And I would turn that around. And I think a lot of times that is a secret self-condemnation. How are you actually celebrating Christmas? You call yourself a Christian. Where is Christ? Where is Scripture? Where is the gospel in your celebration? It really isn't Starbucks that's messing that up. That would be you. And so I think we're looking for an external way of focusing our frustration when actually we need to look inward and say, have I taught my children what this holiday is about? Have I found traditions that bring the gospel in? How can I make this richer in its fullness as a celebration of Jesus Christ? As for your second part of the question, Christmas is the most Christian time of the year. People have this so backwards. It is the easiest time of year to tell the gospel by far. It is the easiest time of year to convince somebody who does not usually go to church to come to a church service. They will be on board much more readily. If you say, come to our Christmas Eve service, they're like, okay, sounds kind of like, it feels like it would be culturally kind of accessible and wonderful and warm. I'm in. Again, this radio station I told you about, plays pop songs all year long, but you could tune in to this major pop station in Chicagoland and hear about the Savior being born, hear about sins being forgiven. That's extraordinary. It's there. I was reading, one of the Harry Potter books, and it says, oh, part of their Christmas celebration is that the suits of armor are magically made to sing Christmas carols, and they sing, "Oh, come all you faithful." This is in Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and these suits are singing, "Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord." It's amazing. So I would say, like, rather than being grumpy, why don't you take advantage of this very rich harvest field that's right in front of you and make the most of the fact that Christmas connects people to the gospel in a natural, organic way.
That's great. How can people get your book? What, kind of give a plug rather for your book and any future books you have coming out, and really with that, how can they connect with you or follow you in your work?
Yeah. 12 Classic Christmas Stories is the book for this season. You can get it anywhere you get books. Somebody behind the scenes really is hoping people will put reviews on Amazon, and he told me, like, can you work that in? I'm like, I don't think I can work it in, but I just did. It's amazing. Uh,
Boom.
but it's also on Audible, and that's the account that I have. If there are other platforms that also have it, good for you. Tell me your name, send me merch, and I will plug your name as well. So yeah, it's widely accessible. It's not expensive, and it's loads of fun.
That's great. What works do you have coming up?
Yeah, so I'm a scholar, so like it's very confusing that people want to talk about my books or read them or buy them, and so I feel like I'm kind of like disowning my identity. So, but the next scholarly book is also in production, and it's on military chaplains in the First World War, kind of the collision of faith and violence there that is so haunting, and so I'm excited about that as well. But it'll be, as we say in the business, for a more select audience, probably.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for coming on the show, spending some time with us today. This has been such an enlightening and really just a fun conversation.
I've enjoyed it a lot. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas to you as well. And to our viewers and listeners, thanks, guys, for joining us. Again, this has been Dr. Timothy Larsen. Make sure that you pick up his book about the 12 Christmas stories, 12 classic Christmas stories, and go find that wherever books are sold. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. And until next time, keep your conversations not right or left, but up, and enjoy your Christmas together with loved ones and family. God bless.